Hello, this is Angela Anderson. Thanks for joining me for this acrylic painting tutorial. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to paint this seahorse. We're going to take our time and go step by step with it all the way from start to finish. I've got my husband, Mark, with me.
Hey there, everybody.
He's been in chat for our live show today, so if you've got questions while I'm painting, you can ask those and I'll try to answer them. Let's get started. Alrighty, so I'm using a 9 by 12 inch Belgian linen canvas board from Fredrix. They're Pro Series. They're awesome. They've got a nice hard core so they don't warp or anything. Very high quality. And I have put a very thin coat of a transparent yellow oxide on here. Used equal parts water and glazing medium for the background just to give it a little bit of a tone. And you could put in on a darker yellow oxide if you wanted to, but I had already put in my drawing, so I didn't want to cover it over. So that's why mine's so thin. So let me go over my brushes really quick. We're going to need a few little angle brushes to get into these tight spots to do our background, since we're going to be painting around the seahorse. If you wanted to, you could paint your whole background and then transfer your design onto that and then paint in the seahorse with your yellow oxide so that it has a nice yellow base, and then continue with the painting as I'm going to be doing it. So there's a couple different ways of doing it. I've got a number 8 and number 4. So this is a 5/8 inch, 3/8 inch angles, and then a 1/4 inch angle. These are all Princeton brushes. Velvet Touch, the red handles. Umbria, the dark handles. Excuse me. I don't think that was supposed to be in there. That was left over from my Thursday video. Okay, I've also got a number 6 Filbert and a number 4 round and a number 6 round for some of the larger leaves and background details. And then you're going to want some sort of a stippling brush to do the greenery and the coral and things. Not greenery, coral. 1/4 inch and 3/8 inch blenders here, and then this is the 3/16 inch Deerfoot stippler. Really, any of these brushes are going to be sufficient. I don't know that I'll need all of these, but I grabbed just a few different sizes. So all the corals will have kind of a little texture, and having a brush that's got a little bit of a stiff bristle or angled bristles like this one will help us get in there and do those. And then for the grasses, I'm going to want a long, either one of these two brushes. I've got my 1/4 inch dagger striper to see. I might use that for some of them, although these aren't super bladed, so I may not need this one actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, I probably won't use it. And then I've got a few little round brushes for some of the details on the the seahorse. If you want to know how to draw a seahorse, I have a video on that I did a couple, 2-3 years ago. So I'm not going to draw it today. We'll just be painting him today. I don't have time for that because it's going to take us a while to get to him today, but I do have a drawing video about how to do a seahorse, and it is nautical creatures. It's called Nautical Creatures. So if you just Google or go up into the YouTube search and put Angela Anderson sea creatures or something like that, it'll come up, or even just seahorse, and it'll come up in that Angela Anderson seahorse. It'll show up. It's on a blue canvas with white. So it's blue and white. It was a very simple, but it'll give us give you a good seahorse basis. The tail is a little bit different, but that's about the only difference. So I think it's even facing the same way. All right. Oh, let's get going here. So thank you to Fredrix and Princeton, our sponsors. Fredrix sends us canvases and Princeton supplies us with brushes. They're awesome. I was already using their products, and so it's just a win-win for everybody. They don't pay me to use them, but they're really some of my favorites, and they're awesome. So thank you to them. Let me go over colors. I've got black, carbon black. I'm not sure I'm going to need that, but I grabbed it just in case. Burnt umber, burnt sienna. And speaking of, I need to spray all these to keep them wet. I just put them out. Carbon black, burnt umber, burnt sienna, quinacridone burnt orange, yellow oxide, Indian yellow hue, cadmium yellow medium, quinacridone magenta, dioxazine purple, Prussian blue, ultramarine blue, Phthalo Blue, Cobalt Teal, Phthalo Turquoise, Phthalo Green, Yellow shade. I don't need that much. It just plopped right out of my thing. It's way too much came out, so I don't think I'm going to need that much. Unbleached Titanium, Titanium White, and then this is my glazing medium that I showed earlier. That's the golden glazing medium liquid. It's got a little bit of a slow drying extender in there, so it works well for our needs. And glazing is just using a thin coat to tint things, and we'll be definitely using it on here. So, and then you might want a sea sponge for some of the background. I don't know how much I can use this because I'm going to be painting around the Seahorse, but I think I'll probably for sure use it up in this upper corner. If you don't have all these colors, just use what you've got that's similar. I put out a lot of these colors because I'm going to try to work quickly today, and having the pre-mixed colors really speeds up the process. But I do have a color mixing video that shows you how to mix most of these colors. So just using basic a few basic colors. So like I think there's 8 or 9 in my basic palette that can mix just about everything else. So if you want to, if you don't have all these colors and you want to know how to mix some colors, you can check that video out. It'll help you, hopefully. Hey, phew, that was quick. How are you doing today, honey?
I'm doing good.
Good.
Just came up for a breath of air here.
I know. It's already been 12 minutes. Or, well, I started late, I guess, so.
A few minutes, but not too bad.
Not too bad. I was still putting out my paint, so. So, yeah. Welcome to everybody, and if you hopefully if you're new, you'll stick around and come back, subscribe, and all that good stuff.
Thumbs up.
Yep. Share it with your friends. Helps us tremendously. All right, let's get going here today. So like I said, I already drew out my Seahorse and everything on here, so I'm just going to be painting around him a little bit today. I'm going to grab, let's see, I think our base color, and I used yellow for our undercoat because it'll mix well with the greens and blues on top. So it won't clash. Like I wouldn't want to use like a color that would not mix well with our our main colors. So I could have used blue, but our Seahorse doesn't have any blue in it. So the yellow was a color that is kind of in all of the other colors. So that's why I picked it. It's in our corals, it's in our Seahorse, and it's also in the green that are blue and blue. So, all right, let's grab, I think I'm going to go ahead and start with the turquoise. That's the color that I'm seeing most of back here. And I'm just going to kind of paint around him, and I'm not going to worry too much about the little spikies right now because we'll probably just put those in again later. But if we can go around them, that'll help us not have to do it again. And you can see I'm going fairly thin with it. Okay, so then don't go too much with this outlining before you blend out this edge. So once I get kind of a good outline area going, and this is only if you're going to be outlining yours. If you're not, then you don't have to worry about this. In fact, I'm going to go right over those spikes because I just feel like it's going to be too much to try to paint around them. All right, So what I want to do is make sure that these outer edges are feathered out before I go any farther. So I'm just going to kind of do that section and then feather out any of those lines. And that way I don't have a solid line there that I have to compete with later to paint around. So down here, I'm going to get a little bit more of the Cobalt Teal because this area down here is a little bit lighter. And Phthalo Turquoise you can mix with Phthalo Blue and Phthalo Green in pretty much equal parts. So if you don't have it, you can mix it yourself really easily. But again, it just speeds things up when I've got these colors pre-mixed. I can grab them and go and don't have to worry about it. So our coral is kind of do this sort of in and out thing here.
So did you sketch in the coral also?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Just a little bit.
So I lied in chat. Sorry.
Just a little bit. Okay, again, so we've got all this. This is going to be all coral here. And trying to see where I'm at here on this. There. I feel like this goes in right here. I don't know why I'm bringing it out again. Okay. That. And then up here it's quite dark. So I'm going to grab that Prussian blue. Prussian blue you can mix with ultramarine blue and black. So, or you can add a little phthalo blue to it too. It's got a little bit of a blue, green, but ultramarine blue is kind of the base. And then just a little bit of black. It's a beautiful color. And you notice I didn't clean out my brush, so it's all these colors are going to kind of merge together, and that's fine. Mainly just trying to kind of blend out that transition between the one color and the other color a little bit. Every now and then grabbing a little bit more water. And this definitely is going to have to go way darker back here, but it's just kind of our initial layer. So and just using the tip of the brush to kind of get in between any little areas here that I see. And it's okay if I go over some of these because we'll be painting those spiky things out. Again, feathering out that edge, and how I feather is just using whatever's left on my brush and just pulling that wet paint layer out so that it's got a soft edge there that I can blend back into. And then back over here, it actually starts to go a little bit brown. So I'm going to grab a little bit more of that, and I'm grabbing some purple with it. That's fine. I'm going to grab a little bit of brown. And back here, I'm just going to use that. Now make sure that you don't add too much water at this point, because if I added too much water, what would happen is I would end up washing off. You can see how it'll pull off that damp paint back here. So make sure that when you're putting your next layer on, that it's at least the same thickness as the paint that it's going on top of. And that way it will cover. Otherwise it might have some issues. Okay, so that's good. I'm going to get a little bit of that phthalo green, a little bit more of the turquoise. Do that around his face here. And what can happen too is if that background layer is starting to dry, that layer that we're blending into, which seems to be happening right in here, then I don't want to go back up into that area right now. So I'm not going to worry about it's not going to look blended yet. This is just our initial layer. Our under layers are always weird and ugly looking. So call it the ugly stage. So just kind of know that that's going to happen when you're putting on these first color, background colors. It's not going to look good, and you're going to start questioning yourself when you get there. If you don't realize that that's going to happen ahead of time, then sometimes you'll get to this stage and give up and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm doing this wrong. Something's wrong." And then what you'll start to do, because you because you're not trusting the process, is you're going to go straight into what you think it should look like. And so you'll start putting your upper layers on instead of building this process from the ground up. And when you do that, it makes your painting look flat, because your upper layers are going to be your lighter colors, obviously. And those are the colors that your brain's going to be telling you that it needs to look like. So it's just a process of kind of like trusting that we're going to get there, and trusting that it's okay for this to look really weird at this point, and know that we'll get it there. But you just have to kind of trust that process, that it's normal. It's kind of, I think of it like a teenager. It's going into the teen stage here. It's a little awkward, but there's potential. No offense to any teenagers. I'm speaking about my own teenage experience. There might be some braces happening here. Okay, so there we go. So we've got a few colors. Obviously, none of this is blended yet, and that's fine. This is dry, so what I'm going to do is grab some of this color from over here and just put it over the top and blend that over. Get rid of those brush strokes that I'm seeing. I'll just darken it up a little bit. Give it a second color happening. And this is still wet up here, so I can't really go much farther than right there. And let me grab the brown and the purple. Burnt umber, purple. I'm going to add a little bit of that Prussian blue to it also. It's going to be our dark color in our coral. So I'd like to use color instead of black. So this is called a chromatic black, which means your eye's going to believe it's black, but it's not. It's a color. It's not actual black. But we've mixed a dark color, and purple is one of my favorite colors to use instead of black. This also will give us that blue undertone that we'd see underwater. So using purple instead of a true black will also kind of help with that illusion. Having a little bit of a bluish purple tone in it will look a little bit more natural than using a black in this case. So I'm just going to go ahead and cover most of this with the purple. And you're like, why did you even paint that yellow in if you were going to cover everything? Well, it's still peeking through, and especially where the paint's thinner than other areas, you're still seeing it, and it just tones the canvas. It makes it easier for me to see my values, to have a color there instead of that pure white. So it's a good habit to get into. And when you're picking your colors, like I said, there's no real hard and fast rule. I find that yellow oxide is one of the easiest colors to use as an undertone. I use it quite a lot. It goes with just about anything, even blue, like on a sky or something like that. It works. So I'm going to grab a little bit of the burnt orange and yellow oxide here, and I'm going to use that in this area for the undertones in my coral, because these areas are not quite as dark as the other areas. They're getting a little bit of light, maybe. I don't even know. This is probably an aquarium fish. The light is too good for it to be like underwater, unless they lit it up with a light or something, but that's okay. What?
It is hard to tell.
Yeah.
They might have had those bright lights on their cameras.
Could have been.
Just hanging out there by himself.
I found out I was looking at Seahorse facts. So I'm going to quiz you on Seahorse facts, Mookie. What is a group of seahorses called?
They called a gaggle.
Wrong.
Parade.
Nope. It's a good guess. I'm mixing a little bit of this green in here with this.
Stampede.
That's closer. Think horse.
A trot.
No.
No, getting colder. Somebody asked a herd.
That's right. It's a herd.
I cheated. I had help on that.
That's okay. Okay, so there we go. So we got all these kind of undertones. The scary's a little bit lighter. I'm going to add a little bit of the lighter color.
But for real, who gets to make those decisions?
I don't know.
Who's the one who says, no, I'm right? It's a herd.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because I think a gaggle would be better.
Gaggle. Okay, I'll let that set. Now leaving the Seahorse pretty bright because he's got a kind of a translucent color. So I don't want to add too much color yet to him. We're going to add our color gradually. May have to have you dry this. I don't want to start on him until I get my background done. So you don't mind. Thank you. All right, I said I wasn't going to draw him, but I'll go ahead and we can draw him real quick. While Mark's doing that. So your basic shape is obviously going to be this long nose here. That's the most identifiable, part of the seahorse. Let me zoom here. So our angle is kind of like right in here. Then we've got this part that sticks up and out. It rounds out a little bit, comes down, then flattens out, kind of parallels this. It comes back a little bit farther, rounds out again. I went a little bit too big on this nose. It's kind of in between my first. I always go lighter. I went too dark there. I was like real confident. You always go light with your first layers of your sketch, and then you can darken it up once you realize that you've got it right. A little bit of a thing there. This may be a little bit long. Let's see. I think it's going to start right in here somewhere. So the head's going to come angle up right here. This eye is right here. And it's just kind of above where this comes out. It comes down just a little bit. So like if you were to draw a straight line from here out, it's going to be right kind of at the bottom of that line. There, the eye. And it's an oval. This guy's looking this way. He's turned a little bit away from us, so his eyeball is not quite right in the middle. It's kind of forward a little bit. And then he's got this, and then his neck rounds out right here. And his big old belly comes out, curves down. And if you did kind of a diagonal line here, the belly kind of curves in right about the same level as that. So I went down a little bit too much there. I'm not a fast drawer. It takes me a while. I think I used to be faster, but when I started wearing glasses, it really trips me up a little bit. I don't know what it is. I think it's the fact that I'm looking at it two different. This is closer and this is farther away, and it just kind of messes with my perception of things. So I have to check and recheck. as I'm drawing things. I think we got it just about right there. So there's our basic shape, and our tail's coming down like that. And then all you're doing is adding these little spikes in different places. And there's spikes along the body too on the inside here. And then there is a fin, but on this guy, I think it's kind of, I don't see it. So hopefully he wasn't photoshopped, because that would really suck if he was photoshopped into this and they'd cut out the, it doesn't look like he was, but I don't see his little back fin. So we can maybe add that. It's usually right in here somewhere where this dips in. I'm going to maybe see if I can find another photograph of a seahorse so we can add one, because I kind of think it needs it. Because otherwise he can't swim around. Okay. That would be tough. They're not very good swimmers. They don't have a lot of, they pretty much kind of go with the flow. From what I was reading this morning, I'm acting like I'm like the seahorse expert here. I read this. All right, so let's go ahead and add some of our darks back in here. I'm going to grab that sea sponge and my purple and our Prussian blue, just kind of equal parts, and I'm just going to tap it in here. This back in here, I might even go just a tiny bit of black, really dark back there. And then once I'm going to do my darkest part where I want it to show up the most in there, where I want that dark to be the most obvious. And then I'm going to just use whatever's left on my sponge as I get farther out, and it won't tint it as much. It won't have as much paint on there. So use the thicker paint where you want it darkest when you very first load it up, and then I haven't reloaded it at all. Just that once, maybe 2 times to get it really dark in this back area here. If you're not seeing anything back here, then you can add, and I'm going to grab some green here. Then you can add some lighter color. So, if you got your this area dark enough on the first layer, you may not have to do the dark color. You may need to do a little bit lighter color to show up. You just want a little bit of a contrast right here. And I'm going to go right over the top of my seahorse here. I'm not worried about him. There we go. That sea sponge just kind of gives it a little bit of texture there, gives it a little bit of interest. Makes it really easy to get this area filled in. I'm going to go ahead and just do this whole thing all through here. And what I can do, if I get it on my seahorse here, I can take a paper towel. If I can find one. Where are my paper towels? There they are. We're right close to it. Get a little bit of water on my finger here, stick it up underneath there, and just kind of wipe off any of this paint. This part's probably already dried, but down here it's still wet. And I can kind of wipe that off. So catch it while it's still fairly new. It'll work off. Just don't rub too hard because you'll rub all of your yellow off too. And paint takes about 24 hours for it to cure. And then after that, it's pretty indestructible. But while it's still curing and fully drying, it'll feel dry to the touch. Like if I touch this, it looks dry, but it's actually not fully cured and absorbed into the hardened and absorbed into the canvas all the way. So it'll still wipe off if you're not careful. Okay, I think that's pretty good there for the background. So let's start kind of adding in some of our grasses and things back here. I'm going to grab some of the Cobalt Teal, some of my turquoise, maybe a little bit of the phthalo green. And if you don't want this to be super like bright, you can add a little bit of burnt sienna. That'll kind of tone it a little bit, make it look a little bit more natural. Sometimes in nature you're going to want to do that, sometimes not, just depends. But most of the time you're going to want a more of a neutral color. A lot of times things are not going to be like super bright unless it's like bird feathers or flower petals or something like that. That's often when you'll use the paint like straight out of the tube. But otherwise you're often going to want to add just a little bit of a neutralizing color like yellow oxide or burnt sienna or something like that. Let's grab some of the blue, Phthalo blue here. I'm going to add white. So I have some white, and I still had that green on there, so it's kind of tinting that too. All right, I think that's going to be good. I'm using the Filbert here. And I'm going to use some of the Prussian Blue too. So I'll have kind of some different colors to work with here. And I'm going to just very lightly, I might add a little bit of glazing medium. That'll kind of help it go on a little smoother. And just kind of zigzag. Very faint little things happening back here. Off camera there. Okay. So I'm kind of mimicking the seagrasses, like they're probably happening back there. I'm going to grab some of this greener, and when you mix a color like this, you need to spray it because it'll dry out real fast on your palette. So if you spray it a little bit, it'll help. And then if you're worried about having too much water in your paint, you can add a little bit of the glazing medium. Too much water will underbind your paint. It'll make it not stick to the canvas well. So you do need to be concerned with that. But get some of that phthalo, some of the Prussian blue. So I'm getting the same colors that are in our darker areas, and I'm going to go back over this and add some of that. So there's just a little bit of all these different colors happening back here, and I'm going to go ahead and put very little bit of that back in here. This area back here is a little bit more of like a purple, so I'm going to grab a little bit of purple and add some white to it. It's still got this green and other colors in here, so I'm going to use that. Just a little bit of glaze. And what we can do is go back over this with our sponge too and set that in with our sponge. It'll kind of lift off some of that color and make it look a little bit more natural. Just be sure that the paint is dry underneath when you do this. So, I added that sponging and waited long enough for it to dry before doing any of this. So you don't want to do this while it's wet. I'm going to grab some Ultramarine Blue and add just some pops of that really bright blue in there. Going over the dark color, it's not going to look as bright.
So you're just using the colors to give the effect of the grasses right now?
Yeah, just kind of adding. This area back here is very out of focus, so I'm not trying to, and you don't want to have your background area in super high definition focus. if you do, it pulls that part forward and you don't get any depth. So you really want this back area to be all blurry and, you know, not easily identifiable. So just keep it kind of loose. Just adding very loose details, but keeping everything very blendy and out of focus. That's another thing that people do when they're first starting to paint, is they kind of feel like everything has to make sense, and really you don't have to. And especially it's better, you know, and the stuff like this where it doesn't. If you look at our photograph doesn't. None of this back here is really, like, we kind of know what it is, but we don't see it. And the tendency is going to be to want to sorry about that. The tendency is going to be to want to make sense of this, you know, but it doesn't, you don't want it to. So now as we get closer to the bottom, then we're going to want to start to make some shapes that kind of start to be more identifiable. So now right about in here, kind of that diagonal area is where we're going to start to make starter grasses. So
say hello to everybody.
yeah.
Again, I think we already did a thumbs up and all that
beginning.
stuff, but okay. Sometimes we don't.
I know. I'm trying to get better about it. So I kind
So hello to everybody who's missed the beginning. Shame on you. Or for those who are watching this in the future and just skip to this point. Don't know why you would do that, but hello.
I do that all the time in videos. like, you know, I'm sure people do that a lot because these videos are long. Let me know if you would like to see shorter versions of this when you go to paint it. Like if it would help if we did time-lapse versions of these, or if you'd prefer these longer videos, or if you like, we're not gonna not do it live, you know, that's just my preferred way of doing it. But we do have I have a social media guy that can do editing on videos now, and so we do have the option to make some of these into shorter versions, just for those who don't want to have to sit through the entire live stream. So if that's you, if you're like, I love these, but I fast forward through most of it, leave me a comment. And you're probably not hearing this because you're probably already fast forward through this part, but hopefully some of you, if that's you, if you're like, these are way too long.
And they just missed $1 million giveaway because they fast forward past it.
I know.
Oh, well.
Too bad. Okay, so adding in some of these really bright areas here, just using the edge of my brush. And I don't have to, it's okay if they don't make sense right now. Again, we're kind of just doing the, this blurry area back in here. So just using a variety of all these colors. I'm not really telling you, I'm sorry, what colors I'm done, but I kind of tell you, if you're trying to paint along and you're like, she keeps changing colors and I don't know what she's using. The best thing to do is to, when I mix a new color, to stop your video, take a screenshot, write it down, whatever you need to do, and say, okay, this is phthalo blue or phthalo green, and cadmium yellow here. So this area in my palette is going to be that color. This area here was the phthalo green and cobalt teal with a little bit of the burnt sienna right here. This was a little bit of the Prussian blue mixed in. Over here we had the phthalo blue and the white, and some of this is the green and cobalt teal in here too. And then down here is more the turquoise colors, and over here is the ultramarine blue. So I would take a screenshot of the palette and mark out which each of these are, and then as I mix colors, even it could help you too if you mix your colors on the same place on your palette. If you've got a palette big enough, try to mix your colors sort of in the same place as me, and then you can see where, what color it is to dip back into. But I do recognize that that's kind of an issue, but there's just too much. I can't explain what I'm doing and name every single color every single time I'm using it. So once I mix it, I don't really usually say what it is again. I usually just grab it and switch back and forth between all of these. So if you know that going into it, then you can know to make notes. It makes it a little bit easier to follow if you're painting along. Okay, so grabbing some of the phthalo green here. And the tendency is to kind of lose your depth here as you're adding your darker color, your lighter colors on top. So if you do that, you can go back in and add some of the dark colors in again. And we'll probably glaze over almost all of this background too. So if you got it here and you're like, that area is too dark, but I don't want to have to, paint over one little section, you can just glaze over the whole thing with a little bit of your watered down paint, glazing medium, whatever, and it'll tone that whole area, darken it up or lighten it up or whatever you need it to do. Okay, so using some of this medium light color. And when you first put it on over this dark, it's going to look really too bright, but once we add more of it, it'll kind of, like we did over here, it'll make a little bit more sense. So kind of trust that it'll make sense. So there's one like pretty bright blade right there. Okay, get some of that green, mixing it up with some of that cadmium yellow mixture up there. And this one's, if I pull from the edge down, if I'm pressing my brush flat here, this is the Filbert, so it's got a rounded edge, so it's going to make a nice rounded tip on these grasses, which I want. So just pressing it flat so that when I do lay in these grasses, they've got a good rounded tip on them. A little bit more of the yellow. I think some of these are kind of algae stuck to the rocks too. They're not all grass. Add a little bit of white. Okay. So right about even with the head here, there's some of these brighter grasses are going to start. Let's give it some of the bright blue on the very tip of these grasses. Okay, this brush is too thick. It's not giving me a good little thin. There we go. some of that turquoise, mix that in. Let's use a little bit of the burnt orange to tone that. Burnt orange, yellow, and phthalo green here. What you doing, hun? Okay. Huh? That's weird. It did that. It does that when the power goes out. I have to come in here and turn it off. Okay. And adding some brownish yellow to some of these grasses. They're not all perfectly green. All right, and then these ones down here have the rocks in front, so I'm not going to do them yet.
Can you explain the difference between the golden open paints and the golden heavy body paints?
Yeah, golden open have an extender in them, so it takes them up to 24 hours for them to dry. So they're workable more like oil paints. And you can mix them with your regular acrylics too. So you can mix a little bit of it into an acrylic if you want it to. Like you could, and they have a, I don't use it. Grab it and use it. They have a slow drying medium. So if you have like all of your paints already, I wouldn't go back out, and I would just unplug that. What's I saying? I wouldn't go back out and buy new paints. I would just buy the golden acrylic medium gloss or satin. I think they come in different. Probably have a matte too. And then you can mix this in with your acrylics, and it makes them more like oil paints. I haven't used them. I bought that intending to use it during the shows, and then when I found out that it took 24 hours for it to dry, I was like afraid to use it during the live shows because I was like, oh, I'm going to have areas that are unworkable for, several. I can't risk it. So I need to practice it. I've been meaning to grab it and just practice with it to see, play with it, to see what kind of times that I can get on it. This was the Ultramarine Blue with the white here. I just realized that it's just a little too dark all over back there. Grab the phthalo or the Prussian Blue there and just add some of that in. I'm going to add the purple. See, all in here, this all got kind of the same color. So I'm going to go back in here and add some of this dark. What will help you too is if you take your take a photograph of your painting and turn it black and white, or like squint your eyes a little bit when you're looking at it and squint and look at your reference photo, and then you can see the colors or the values a little bit easier. But doing it in black and white, you can definitely see the values that you're working with and tell if you need to change up anything before you get too much farther. Before I want to get the background right before I put the Seahorse on, because it'll be harder to fix it later if I need, if I need to move anything or do anything different. So now I'm kind of just glazing sort of with a little bit of thinned out Cobalt turquoise or the Phthalo Turquoise here. Get some of that green. The green is not showing up, so I may have to do it in a lighter color and then glaze back over it with my darker green. That's what I need to do. Okay. And see how it tinted that. So you're going to want to tint these grasses where they come down and attach. So I'm using the turquoise here, but whatever you use, you just want a little bit of a dark color right at the base there. It'll help set them in so they look like they fit. I'll grab some of that cobalt or the Indian yellow and mix it with this green here. I've got the turquoise on my brush and going over the top of this phthalo green mixture that I had with the yellow. I'm going to use this. This is probably closer to, it's kind of a orangey base. Just using all kinds of different greens that really help. Things look a little bit more natural. And then I'm going over the top of some of these grasses that I've already done. Okay. And I'm going to pick some of these and just kind of outline them a little bit. Some of these are have kind of a fuzzy glow around them. So this may not be the right brush for it, but it's doing okay. See, having that highlight really will help these pop these forward. Just adding a little bit of highlight to all these grasses that are sticking up now. But you got to have the dark color underneath for these to work. So that's why we did that first. We got to have that darker color under there, and then our highlight's going to really show up. Okay, I think that's good. We'll stop there and start working on our coral. Coral's really fun to do. It's very easy. I may want a bigger brush, but I'll start with this one. This is the Willis blender here. So for these, I'm going to want kind of earthy tones. I'm going to grab my yellow oxide and my burnt orange. You can use burnt sienna if you don't have it. And then I want some of a brown. So I'm going to grab my burnt umber and my unbleached titanium and do kind of a light medium brown here. I'm going to start with the kind of a mid-tone though. So I'm going to grab the burnt umber, maybe some burnt sienna together. We've already got a dark color here, so I'm not going to have to add too much of this color to make it show up. But you can see how much lighter it is, even just using, there's a little bit of those lighter colors in my brush here. Just tapping and leaving a little bit of that texture of the underlayer showing. And this is where you want a scruffy brush because that texture is all we're going for here. Let's get some of the highlight color. Add some unbleached titanium to the yellow oxide, maybe some white too. Want a really bright highlight. So I've got, this is the yellow oxide with a little bit of burnt sienna here, or actually burnt orange and yellow oxide here. Unbleached titanium with it here. This is the burnt umber and burnt sienna, and then this is the burnt umber with the unbleached titanium here. So let's keep on going here. So I'm just going to tap in. Really, it's basically we're just making mixtures of all of our browns and yellows and our whites to just have some different colors to work with. So I kind of put my mid-tone on, and then I'm going to dab in here with my highlight color. Leaving some of that dark. And trying not to get too much of a pattern. So I want to do this in a way where I got some green there. That was good. I picked up a little bit of that blue-green. Looks good. Do it in a way that looks natural. So you're just wanting to make sure that I don't have like a repeating pattern. That's what'll kill the realism here. So if you, and by repeating pattern, I mean, if I was to go through here and do a brush stroke like this and see how that looks super unnatural because it's repeating pattern. So instead of doing that, I'm going to tap up and down and try to make these dark areas more blended. And if you do that, well, you can see it's, I love it when I say do. If you do that, you can fix it. So you can always go back in with your darker color if you notice that has happened. Not a big deal. But it's a tendency that, especially when you're working with these kind of brushes, that you get going like you're like, oh, that looks good, and you keep, and then you'll tend to start working in a rhythm and getting into a pattern because it's just kind of natural. So try to train yourself to get into the pattern of doing this up and back, 1, 2, back, sideways, sideways, up, back, sideways, sideways, up, back, sideways, sideways. So you're constantly working in this, like almost like a figure 8, and that'll keep you from creating weird patterns. I'm going to get some white, and I haven't cleaned my brush out. I'm just picking up some of this green here. Seeing some greens. And I need to switch to a different brush because I can tell like this is starting to get like very patterny, like patterned, and that happens. So I'm going to grab this small Deerfoot stippler, and because it's a round brush instead of a flat brush, you're going to get a totally different pattern when I dab with it. It's going to be more of a circle. And I can use the tip of it to get lines, or I can use the full round part. Most of the time when I'm using the Deerfoot, I'm loading the very tip of the brush. I'm just kind of pulling it at an angle so that the tip is getting a little bit more paint. And that way I can kind of control where it's going a little bit better. And I can angle it down and dab it in where I want it to be brighter. I'm putting all kinds of bright green over here telling you how to use this brush where it doesn't need to be. So I'm just going to go back in here. Let's fix that. We didn't need to do that. I'm going to get some white. My burnt orange, a little bit of the yellow, Indian yellow, making it bright. But that's a pretty color. That'll actually be probably the color that we use on our Seahorse too. So that's that was the burnt orange and Indian yellow. Remind me when we go to use it. I think that'll be a good color. Okay, so there's a big old something right here, a barnacle or something right here that we're seeing. I'm going to grab some purple, do the center of it with purple. And let me see, I'm going to grab an angle brush. Here, get some of the darker browns. Put that around the back side of it. Brown, purple. I want this area to be dark. You know what? I'm going to just wipe this off because I have too much paint on here. It's just not blending for me. Okay, so let's start that area over. Now that I've got my smaller brush, it'll be easier. I'm going to grab this color. It's right in here somewhere. I'm just going to do kind of a semicircle here, like a C. And then grab some of the darker, put it around the back side of it. And then this bottom area is going to blend into this dark purple back here. And we can let that set and add our darker colors in there if we need to, but there's the purple. Just making sure that's dark right there. Losing my voice. So we just want a little bit of a highlight area on the top there. So I'm going to let that set for a minute and continue working on our corals and things. There's a little bit of like a light green behind it, so I'm going to bring that light green all the way up to it. Using the angle brush, we can use the very tip of it straight down to create our little dabs and dashes, so we don't have to have the stippler. We can still use regular brush. And it helps to have different brushes in here. It'll kind of break up that patterns, like I said, and you'll have all these different things going on, and your eye can't focus on any one little pattern to make it look unnatural. We have several different brushes and different techniques going on here. I'm gonna get some of the cobalt teal, a little bit of that phthalo blue, kind of a bright turquoisey blue here. Kind of right along this area. There's some of that kind of like jelly, like it's like these leaves are coated with goo, you know. So they kind of have that. Looks like jelly. Okay. So kind of just blending these two areas in. You can't really, in your photograph, you can't really tell what it is, so I don't want it super defined. Just want to kind of blend that there, and then this drops off, and this area down here is all kind of dark right there. Get some of the burnt orange. There's a little bit of burnt orange right here. Kind of where the tail is. These guys are camouflage masters, so he's grabbed onto some coral that's the exact same color as his tail. So we can't even really tell which is coral and which is his tail. So I'm going to use this yellow, Indian yellow and burnt orange here and kind of start that color up his tail here. Get a little bit of the green because I feel like this needs a little green in here. Okay. So just blending that tail in. We'll continue this color up, but for now it'll kind of start it. I'm going to use this color. This is the green with my burnt orange mixture that I was just using there. Burnt orange, yellow oxide, or Indian yellow, QBO here, and green. Get a little bit of that Indian yellow. There we go. And I'm going to use this now that this is dry. I'm going to use a little bit of that Indian yellow at the top of that guy. There. Okay. Clean that up really well. And I'll go back to my stipplers because they'll do faster work on this. I'm going to clean this guy out because I haven't been using him. And I want to keep these brushes that are still wet. You can see that the paint's down in here. And if I let that dry out, it will, it'll dry in that ferrule. So I need to make sure that I keep these damp by adding some water, pushing that water up into that ferrule and just leaving them pretty soaking wet, but setting them off to the side on a paper towel to not to dry, and every now and then getting a little bit more water with them so that they stay damp before I clean them out. I always wash with water and soap, a little bit of the mild detergent. It will keep your brushes lasting a long time. Don't ever let them dry out with paint in them. And even if it looks like you've gotten all the paint out in your water, you still need to use soap and test it on a white paper towel. You'll pretty much, once that paint gets stuck up in that ferrule, that dark up in here, and dries up in there, it spreads, it dries solid like a, solid, like a solid thing. Can't think of it. Anyhow, dries solid, so the bristles can't come to a good point anymore. You can see how bladed that point is. It's like a knife edge, and you can tell if you've got a brush that's got paint dried up in here because it won't hold that point anymore. It'll be fuzzed out just a little bit, and the more paint, the more fuzzy it becomes. So let me grab some. I'm seeing some blue. I'm going to grab some Ultramarine Blue, just mix it with these colors that I've got going on here and add it right in here. And then grab some of my turquoise. I use this kind of on the underside of the coral here to add some blue shadows to some of these areas. And then purple. Just darkening up this dark area here so I can see through some of these areas. So just adding a little bit more of the darker color down there. Off camera.
We got a brush question.
Okay.
They would like to know, how is the Umbria compared to the Aspen as far as stiffness?
The Umbria is stiffer than the, just a little bit stiffer than the Velvet Touch, but not as stiff as the Aspen. So the Aspen is more like a synthetic hog bristle. It's got thicker. Each one of these little hairs is just a little bit thicker, I feel like, and it's much stiffer. You can hear the difference. Maybe. I don't know. He may have the filter on so you can hear. Hold it up to the microphone.
Okay.
And then this one is softer. It still has a flick, but this one is much more obvious. And then the, let me see if I can find a brush. This one. Okay, so here's the, you can hear how much softer that is. So these bristles are softer than the Umbria, and the Aspen are the next, much thicker and firmer. And then I would say the Umbria and the 6100 series are pretty similar. So the thing with the 6100 series is that they don't come in the smaller sizes. So that these are really my favorite as far as the firmness goes. They're really really great to work with, the Summit series. But they come in the super long handles and they don't come in the smaller sizes. So the Umbria is fast becoming kind of my favorite. Really, the both of these do really well for detail and stuff. The only time I'm using the Aspen really is these Aspen ones is when I want a lot of texture and I'm pushing that paint around using it thickly. So like the Impressionist Girls series that we're doing, we're putting on that paint a lot thicker and we're putting on like a little bit messier and more textured. So these brushes are great for that. But if I was trying to get a smooth blend, I would not use this brush. I would use my softer bristle brushes. You can't get a smooth blend with a stiff bristled brush. It's just really difficult. But you can also not really push your paint around as much with a softer brush. So it's kind of a, it just depends on the kind of style of painting that you want to be doing and that you like. So that's what I would get. If you know you're going to be doing a lot of Impressionist stuff and that you're going to want a brush that gives you a lot of texture, then I would get the Aspen for sure. But if you are going to be doing like blending and things, then I would probably get the 6100 or the Umbria or the Velvet Touch. And if your Velvet Touches actually would be good for like watercolor too, because it's soft enough that you could probably use it for watercolor. Although I would not use the same brushes for both watercolor and I'm getting new brushes. I'm starting to kind of dabble with watercolor and gouache. And watercolor and gouache both use the same base binder, gum Arabic, or sometimes honey, depends on the brand. They use different binder than acrylic. They don't have the acrylic base, although there are they're called acryl gouache, and those are acrylic based. So in those cases, I wouldn't worry about using the same brush. But if I'm using a brush, if I'm doing anything like oil, acrylics, watercolor, I'm never using the same brush for those different mediums, because since they're using a different base, especially acrylics and oil, you never want to use the same brushes for that. But I'm going to go ahead and get new brushes and just use them just for watercolor, so that I don't have any issues with the paint not absorbing into the brush right, or not performing right. It may be just taking. Plus, it gives me an excuse to get new brushes. So try new ones, at least. Okay, so using the very tip of my brush to do these little dabs, dots now, some of these with this. This is the Indian yellow kind of mixture, I think. I can't remember what I used. Okay. Definitely need like another layer of really bright, so I'm just going to use the Unbleached Titanium and do kind of some bright highlights over some of that. And then up in here. And if you don't want it to be as fuzzy, which it's really not like necessarily fuzzy, except for like over here, I'm seeing fuzz. But like in some of these areas, it's kind of, it's just textured. So I can use the tip down and just kind of smooth that paint on. So it's not going on quite as fuzzy. I'm not tapping with it. I'm just kind of smushing it around. And then I want to go back in and add back in some of my darker areas in there. Like I'm seeing I have no dark areas over here anymore, so going back in, adding those back in. It's just kind of a matter of layering. Really, you can stop at any time that you're happy with yours. You can put any number of colors on here too. So corals come in all kinds of different colors. So you can get real creative with it if you want to do brighter oranges or brighter yellows or whatever you want to do on here. These ones are a little bit more earthy, probably a little bit more natural toned. Which makes me think if it is an aquarium, it's not fake coral here. It's probably fresh or saltwater corals here that's attaching to. These don't look fake to me. Okay, getting some of the yellow and green. Add some of that in. Some algae sticking to these. Grabbing some blue. Again, just kind of working my transitions, making sure I've got darks, and lights. That's going to give me that contrast and give me some depth in this painting. Okay, then let's add our purple. And I think I'm going to go ahead and use the 1/4 inch angle. How did I get that much paint on my tip of my finger there?
Got another brush question.
Oh, it is stuck on there too. Go ahead.
They would like to know, when it comes to a fan brush, should they use a synthetic or a natural bristle?
It depends on what you're doing with it. I like their select brushes, the select fan brushes. They are a little bit, they're a synthetic hog bristle, I believe. I don't think, well, maybe these ones are real, but these ones definitely feel like they're synthetics. But hog bristles tend to get sloppy in water, so they get floppy. They absorb the paint, and then they bend and they don't hold their shape very well. So I think these are synthetic also because they don't get soft when you get them wet. At least not as much. So I really like their bristle fans. If you're doing like very thin, like you're wanting to do very thin lines, then you might need a softer fan brush. So just make sure that you're using a lot of water, like the same amount of water that you would when you're using a very thin liner brush, because if you're not thinned out, this brush is too soft to push that paint around, and you won't get any separation with your paint. It'll just clump up on here. So I use them for different things. So if I'm doing grasses or long grasses or like long fur, you can use a softer fan brush. If you're using it for like shorter grasses or like little meadow grasses and things like that, or a little like small stippled textures, I like to use these ones that have a little bit more texture to them. You can still get some grasses with the thicker textured brushes too. So I tend to use the hog bristle type fan brushes more often. But since you have to use so much water in with your fan brushes, I find that the hog bristle ones get too soft. So I like to use those synthetic ones that Princeton has. So that was kind of so not natural hog, but hog bristle, synthetic hog bristle is the answer. So makes sense? That was a long answer. Don't get me started on brushes. I can talk forever about brushes. Don't get me started. I do. It's a passion. Well, I've painted for close to 30 years now, so I know, like, I've had a lot of bad brushes experiences. So I know I'm pretty particular about what I paint with now. And I can tell you that you will have a whole lot better painting experience if you invest in some good brushes. Do not go out and buy one of those cheap sets of, please do not go out and buy one of those multi-sets of really cheap brushes that you find on Amazon from no-name brands. Like these brands will have starter sets. So all of the the Velvet Touch and the Umbria and the Summit, all three have starter sets of brushes that have like 4 to 5 brushes in the starter sets. Also, the Select also has even more. They have at least 4 different, maybe 5 different starter sets of brushes that you can get. Those are going to be a little bit more economical than buying them individually. Usually they're discounted a little bit, but I would get those before I would get the no-name cheap brushes, because you will not have a good experience with them. They will not perform well for you, and they will make your painting experience a lot more difficult. All right, so it looks like pretty much straight up from this big barnacle thing down here is our big kind of tuber that's hanging out here. So I don't know what this is, but it's got kind of an opening right here. So I'm using the darker kind of purple with the magenta. So I mixed up some purple and magenta together, and I'm going to use it to kind of tint over some of this coral that's already sort of started right there, kind of that orangey coral. And I know going over the darker color, it's not going to be able to show up. So I'm going to gradually add my color that's got a little bit of white in it. And I think I'm going to dry brush this because it's going to... So I put that color down, and then I'm just going to smush this paint around where I want it to kind of go. So kind of laid it down fairly thickly. And then I'm just going to kind of smush it around. Even some of that darker color showing. How you doing, hun?
I'm doing good.
Good. Thanks for hanging out with me today.
Mm-hmm. No problem.
How's chat doing? They hanging in there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Good. Adding a little bit of blue here. Ultramarine. With my more white. These ones kind of are knobby. They have like little knots almost. So I'm just kind of dabbing with the tip of my brush to get those kind of circular. And I'm going to wipe my brush off. And I'm just going to use that tip. And you may not want to do this many because I'm going to work pretty quickly. So you may just do 1 or 2 little dabs and then go back and add more paint and do more. You know, you don't want this to dry out before you get the chance to kind of blend these out just a little bit. So I'm just kind of going around. I'm not really dabbing into the center where I have that bright color. I'm just kind of going around the outside of it and kind of smooshing that paint around so that it blends in a little bit. That blue really helps kind of make that coral look realistic too. I like that blue color in there. Okay, then getting some of the, now that I've got that lighter color down, I can add some of this purpley pink on top. Of course, if the paint is super thick wet, you don't want to do this yet. You gotta let it dry a little bit before you try to cover over, but it's drying pretty quickly for me, so I'm able to kind of do this. I'm going to go ahead and add some over here too. This area right here has got a lot of that pink. I'm going to go back in here with the white, get some white with the pink, purple color, and just add some highlights over the top here and create some shapes. Get some yellow and green. A bit of the unbleached titanium down here. So this area's got some of that lighter color kind of coming down right here. And then there's kind of this dark area that meanders right through here. So I'm going to get some of that darker purpley brown. Just reestablish that dark corridor that kind of goes from here to down there. And I'm going to add some of the medium browns around the outside of this. Maybe a little bit of the Quinacridone burnt orange. Gonna fly landing on my painting here. And there's some kind of connecting little dealies here, so I'm just going to kind of use the edge of the brush to create those little flyaway thingamabobs. What this does by having like areas of dark and areas of light, it just pushes back any of these areas that are dark here, go recede down in, and especially if we use the purples and blues for those areas, that really emphasizes it. So we're kind of using the cool colors, the cooler temperature colors to emphasize that, the shadows, and then using the warmer colors, the oranges, orangey reds and things, pinks too. And pink, this is kind of on the borderline because it could be considered a cool color too, but because we're using it with so much of the highlights some of the white colors. It's acting a little bit more like a warmer color. But definitely these oranges and things will come forward at us. Get in some of this turquoise. Using some turquoise here. Just overlapping. Okay, so I think I'm pretty close to where I want to be on all this coral. I'm gonna let this set. This has got a lot more light all the way in here. Get some of that Indian yellow. And then we're going to put our grasses over the top of all this down here. So yeah, pretty happy with that. And put a little bit of coral here, just kind of connecting all of this together. But most of this is going to be all kind of grasses, so I'm not worried too much about it. I'm going to add some burnt sienna though here to just give it a couple other colors in there. And this drop off here is not like a solid. It's kind of got a little bit of other colors in here, so we can do burnt umber and other colors. Pretty. I like it. Right here, there's a little bit of a connection, so I need to put that back in.
Someone wants to know, is there a way to simplify this? Do you think it looks like it's getting harder and harder with all the layers?
It's really not. It's not. If you notice the, the brush strokes that I'm using, I'm just using the same brush strokes. It's the only reason that it looks complicated is because I'm layering them so much. But I'm not doing anything fancy here. I am using just little dabs and dots. That's all I'm doing. So I don't be intimidated by this. I really feel like it is, corals are one of the easier things to paint. I have I have two other actually ocean reef paintings. I've got one that's got a mermaid. It's part 1 and 2. One's got a mermaid and the other one, the first part is just the coral reef. So you could check that one out. And then I've also got, I'm using highlight color here now, just a little bit of the white with the color that I had on my brush here. And then the other one is just a coral reef with fish. So those would help too if you want to look at those, because they're even more simplified than this one. Maybe less complicated, but I really don't feel like this one looks complicated because it's starting to look realistic, and I think that people think realistic is hard, like it's just more intimidating the more realistic something starts looking, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be difficult to attain. You just, as long as you're doing your layers the same way that I am here, I just grab in different colors and trying to find a balance between my lights and darks. Okay, so we'll let that dry. It's going to dry a little bit darker than we have it. So like over here, our green dried a little bit darker. So I'm going to add a little bit of that green. I'm going to use a little bit of cobalt teal and phthalo green and my white. Maybe a little bit of yellow. And just highlight some of these green areas here. That I would say that this this Seahorse is definitely on the more advanced side, so this is not going to be necessarily a beginner lesson, especially when we get into doing the Seahorse. I think it's going to have a lot of, a lot of details. This one I wanted to do realistically. I have that other one, like I said at the very beginning of the show, I have another Seahorse that is that is more simplified. Okay. Oh, got it. I think. Yes. That may be maybe where you want to start. Try that, and try some of the coral, in the coral reef paintings that I did that were more beginner level. But I don't think that this is all that different. It does, I think, though, I can see what you're saying. It does get kind of a little bit more daunting when you've got this many colors being layered over so much time. But I think I think we're pretty much done here. And then I'm going to use a little bit of the yellow and Indian, or burnt orange here. So we're almost 2 hours in, and we haven't even started the Seahorse. So I probably ought to do this in a 2-part, don't I? It's like first part is just the coral, second part is the actual Seahorse, but we're going to keep on going today. I knew this was going to be a little bit more tricky one. Okay, I like that. So let me get the round brush here. I'm going to do my grasses before I do much more here. Then I'm going to clean off my palette before I start on my Seahorse, because I need a clean palette for that. And get a little bit of burnt orange and my yellow, Indian yellow, and my green. And some of them I'm going to go a little bit more green. And I really probably could use, if I had my Zinc White out, I could use a little bit of Zinc White here, but I'm going to use a little bit of Titanium White with my glazing medium. But the Zinc White would help give you that kind of translucent look on these grasses. Kind of adding more grasses than I'm seeing in my photograph, because I don't want to cover certain areas there. Oh, fun. So just doing like layers of the greens, and I'm definitely needing more of this color down in here. But yeah, if you want to simplify this, you could just do the whole coral, with just the stippler, and just pick a couple different colors. As long as you're doing the dark areas, you could leave out this little guy here, or just do all grasses. If you don't want to have coral at all, you could just do all the seagrass everywhere. That'd be fine too. burnt orange. There's some of these grasses that are kind of browner than others. We don't want them all to be perfectly mint green. And by pulling kind of from the tip out, I'm going to get a smaller line on there. But I'm using a little bit bigger brush, and then that way I can get a little bit wider leaf on these grasses than if I was to use a smaller round. Just make it a little bit easier to get the smaller leaves. Oh, I love this. So fun. Okay. You do one that's a little bit farther in here. I'm going to elongate some of these. There we go. Get my highlight color. Pretty much highlighted these already, sort of as I was putting them on. I kind of had, you notice I didn't, when I picked up new colors, I had this kind of streaky, so I didn't create clean mixes. I kind of just picked up a little bit of color and then run it through the color that I had before, and then that way I've got these colors that are a little bit muddy on my brush, and I've got different tones, so they're creating these kind of streaks of color that are a little bit loose. Okay, I'm just going to kind of use the tip of the brush and draw in these little, there's all these little wiggly, squiggly things happening off of there. Probably, you know, that kind of mucusy stuff that you see in the ocean. So just kind of doing that to sort of absorb some of this color here, and grab some of the white and turquoise, add it down here. This area got a little bit darker than I intended for it to be, but that's okay. Get some of the green. Do some thinner green thingamabobs down there, and I'm going to call that background pretty much done. I might add some stems to the leaf, or like some center lines to these leaves, but for the most part I'm going to leave them. Okay. Let's start on our seahorse. Looks like, and 2 more hours to go. Now, hopefully he won't take too long. We'll see. Famous last words, right? Looks like I'll believe it when I see it. I'm just going to spray this down. It makes the paint easier to scrape off my glass palette. Using a razor blade dealie here. Go ahead and scrape off this area where I've been pulling the paint out from too. Just get right up to that wet line of my paint, and that way I can pull fresh paint out. They're still wet. You can see I only pull from the front side. I never pull from the back end, because anytime you're pulling paint from your paint puddle, you're introducing air. And so if you're pulling paint from the middle of the paint puddle, you're going to be drying out your paint a lot faster. So, oh man, that poor thing is just all gummed up. Getting that razor blade out. I'm going to have to like break it out. All right, here we go. Cleaning that up. Okay. Really the only colors I'm going to be using for my Seahorse are kind of my golden colors, my highlight colors. Some of the gold, a little bit of the blue, but mostly these colors in here. All right, so I'm going to start by kind of covering over some of these areas that my green got in here. So I'm going to get a little bit of the cobalt teal and my white yellow oxide here. And the snout is transparent, so we're seeing the blue through it. Why I just did it that wide there. There we go. So I think I actually didn't get my turquoise out far enough over here on the nose area. This looks like really needed it to be a little bit further in here. So I'm just going to kind of clean that up. As long as you kind of blend out that edge, you can add. Whoops, not there though. This background is so blendy that we can get away with kind of cleaning up around it. Okay. And a little bit of that turquoisey blue, a little bit more of it. Put it right in here in the middle. And this out. And a little bit around the outside forehead. I'm going to use the Unbleached Titanium, a little bit of white for the eye area. Use a little bit of that.
Somebody's got a question about your palette.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to know, is the glass palette a game changer from your styrofoam plates?
In some ways, yeah. I mean, it's really nice to be able to just like I did, like not having the waste of throwing away a palette and being able to clean it up and still use the paint that's still wet on here, because when you're using a plastic palette, once the paint, starts to dry in the mixed area, you're pretty much stuck with either dumping the whole thing or, trying to transfer your wet paints over to a new palette, which I've done and doesn't really work very well. So yeah, it's really nice to have it. The only bad drawback is that it does dry a little bit faster than the other paints. So that is kind of a bummer. The plastic palette gives you a little bit more time to dry and work. This one is down here. So the horns are kind of above and below the eye here, coming out. Seeing some lighter grasses in here that I didn't do, so I'm just adding some in. I've got this kind of lighter color on here. I like the coral. I like how it turned out. It's really pretty. Coral is really fun to paint. I'm going to add a little bit, speaking of, I'm going to add a little bit of that darker turquoise right there. Right here. Yeah, this is dry. I can see where I need to add, you know, just a little washes of color. I can add this turquoisey color darker to darken up some of the, give some of these corals a little shadow. Some of these brighter corals a little shadow. All right. Let's go back to our Seahorse here. All right, I'm going to mix up a pretty good amount of the yellow oxide, or I'm sorry, Indian yellow and burnt orange. And then I'm going to add some burnt sienna over here with some yellow oxide. Those are going to be kind of some of our main colors in our Seahorse. And I'm seeing some areas that are just the yellow oxide. So I'm going to put, or the Indian yellow. So I'm going to put those in first, because those are, this is a transparent color and this will go on. I'm going to get a little bit of the burnt orange, add a little bit of that in some of these areas. So like right here, there's a little, some of these spikes that are sticking out right here. So I'm going to put this dark color right behind them on the back side of the neck, underside of the neck, getting some of that transparent color and, or some of that white that we mixed up earlier and putting it in here where that green has gone over the body. Again, if you've painted your background in first, and then this is where you're going to grab your yellow oxide with some white and just fill in the body of your Seahorse over the top of that dark. It'll cover it nicely, let it dry completely, and then we can move on to this, what I'm doing here. Okay, grabbing some white here. Going to add some white to the front side of the belly. The males are the ones that hold the babies too. Which be nice if humans figured out how to do that.
I hold Liam. I held all our kids. What are you talking about?
After the fact.
Oh, well.
They
That
the babies.
That other part is too much work.
And if you've ever watched a video of them actually birthing the baby, it's very typical male style. They just basically they just kick them out. They all just kind of burst out of the belly all at once. They're just like, okay, done.
Get out.
Get out. Everybody out. Out. Just like these clouds of baby. It said that they birth 2,000 babies, and out of those, only 2 usually survive. Statistically, imagine.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's a rough world for seahorses, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, getting some of the darker. So we want the nose to be just a shade lighter than the background around it. So I'm just slowly kind of darkening up this middle area here. Right there, and just adding a little bit of it to the forehead too. Here, that's going to make it look translucent. Okay, and then all these little spikes off the back are also have the transparency to them, so I'm going to start putting them in. One, two, three, four. Okay, it's right here.
So several people have been talking about alternate things for the glass palettes and so forth, and I've seen before today also people saying, well, you can go and can get a picture frame and use the glass out of it and then use the frame for your thing, which is good, but be careful because the Posh palette that Angela's using, I believe, is tempered.
Right.
So if it breaks, it's going to go into a million little pieces, kind of like a car windshield, and you won't get cut. But the panes of glass that are in the frames are not. And so if they crack, they'll be very sharp. So be careful, please.
Yeah. Yes, true. Yeah. So if you're using those knives on them, or the blades might, if you're pressing down too hard on it, you could crack the glass. Yeah, for sure. Will you find me a picture of a seahorse with the little fins on the back? Because I feel like I want, but he I don't know.
Took a bunch of
I'm trying to think. I know I have them in my tablet. If you'll grab me my tablet, I have it. I have some on there, I believe. I have one that I saved that was similar to this. Grabbing some of the yellow. Thank you. Oh. Been prepared here. I didn't realize he didn't have his back fin. So, which definitely makes me think that it might have been photoshopped.
Doesn't look photoshopped. Maybe
no.
Bent over.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Yeah, it could be just the angle that we're seeing it at. Let me go back here. Sorry. A second. Talk amongst yourselves. Take a break.
We're looking for pictures.
Yeah, I'm looking for a picture of the seahorse here that I know I saved somewhere. Come on. There it is. Of course, my computer is super slow right now. My tablet is just like, oh, you wanted to see something? Okay. Yeah, so it starts right in here and comes down. I don't know why it wouldn't be showing on there. Maybe it's folded up. It looks like it could be folded down right here. There's like a little something that looks like it's folded down right here. So I might just kind of do like that. But if you want to, the fin comes out in like a fan shape. So it comes out like angles here, and it's real low on the body, right about across from this bulge right here. So Comes out here and comes out like that. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Part of me wants to put it in just because it's part of that kind of classic look, you know. I'm just going to go ahead and do it real transparent like. And if it looks funky, sorry. That's what I get for trying to do something that's I don't have a good reference photo for. Never goes well for me. Okay. This is too green. I want it more blue. And some turquoise. This is drying super fast on me. My air is on, so getting some white and turquoise here.
I guess that's kind of the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's good though. That gives me. Do you need some reference? Yep. Yeah, I feel like he's probably just got it. Got it. Since he's not swimming, he's probably just got it folded up. Okay. Getting some white hair. Want a lot of transparency here, so I'm gonna use that turquoise in between here. That may be a little bit. I think it's a little higher here. I think I went a little bit low with it. There we go. Okay. Again, if you don't want to do this, you can leave this part out. You're painting. These are not blue, but I'm just putting them in blue right now just to reference them so I know where they're at.
Remember that Seagrass?
What about them?
I just saw a picture for reminding me of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you're in Atlanta, ever go to the aquarium. You'll be so glad you did. It's world class. We didn't even know, we were just traveling through to go to Jordan's our middle son when he was in basic training in the Army. He I need that again. So he was in South Carolina, right? South Carolina, I think. Yes. Yeah, South Carolina. And so we had to travel there, and Atlanta was like halfway. So we stopped for the night there. And we're like, oh, we had time the next morning, and we literally, our hotel was directly across the street from the aquarium. We're like, well, they had like a ton of yeah, we had extra time that day, and so we're like, let's check it out, and just on a whim. And oh my gosh, It was amazing. So unbelievable. Has like whale sharks, full size whale sharks, like 4 of them in this gigantic aquarium. It's I think it's the Western Hemisphere's largest tank largest water tank in the Western Hemisphere. And unbelievable. Just I think Dubai is the only place that has a bigger one. Okay, I want to grab a 1 round. I'm going to start to put in my little, I definitely think I should have had my Zinc White. Here, I'm going to grab it because I'm just seeing lots of need for it. It's the transparent white. It'll just give us a little bit softer look on some of these translucent areas. Mix up with my transparent colors. I'm going to use the titanium white and the zinc white here to do the stripes on the nose. So kind of right down the middle, there's a large one right here. And then there's another one lower and another one above it. And then right around the eye, there's some highlight. And then each one of these little parts is sticking out. It's got a little bit of a highlight. I'm going to go kind of right from the middle and go out and leave a little bit of that blue showing. A little bit outside the line there. This one back here is darker because it's on the back side of the body, so I'm going to just leave it in a highlight in front of it on the thing here. Okay. So we need to get our dark areas in here in order for this to have good contrast. So I'm going to grab my foreground here, and I've got these colors that I've already mixed up. Make sure that keep them wet before they dry out. Kind of got distracted. So this is the burnt umber and yellow oxide color now. Make a little bit darker. It's got a little bit of white in it too. I'm gonna use it. I'm just gonna dab it on fairly thinly to begin with. The body's got a lot of a lot of speckling. So get some burnt umber here. I'm going to put this on kind of almost like glazes. So I'm just kind of laying this on. The body is, like I said, translucent. So if we kind of lay this on, these even the darker areas on to a little bit of translucency, it'll kind of help that effect. It's a really dark area right in front. So I'm going to get that darker burnt umber here and outline the eye with that. Fill in the eyeball. There's little spikes around the eyeball too. So there's like a little spike right here. And this spike here. Let's go ahead and lightly outline this. Dark highlight right there. Dark shadow, I mean. Shadow under this little side fin.
Somebody wants to know, how do you get the translucent look?
The glazing, using thinner paints here. So having that light color underneath and then just doing these darker colors in thin layers will give it that translucent look. So that's why we're kind of building up our layers slowly here. Also, having the blue makes it look transparent. So having that area there will help. I grabbed a little bit of purple there to darken up some of that. And I'm going to grab kind of an in-between color. So now I'm just using a little bit of the white with this. And I can go back in and add my highlights. So I'm not really too worried about covering up. I'm covering up most of my highlight areas here. Just trying to get these darker areas dark enough so that there's good contrast. And then I'm going to add a little bit of glazing medium here. And this area on the nose is very subtle. So I'm just going to very lightly add stripes here. They actually don't have a stomach. They just suck the food up through their nose. They don't have teeth. They just stuck it straight into their bodies. And then I don't know how it dissolves, but so they have to eat very often. Yeah, but they're really good hunters. They like 90% of their have a really high kill rate for a predator because they don't move a lot. They just sit and wait. They're stealth hunters. And they just kind of sway and get closer and closer to the thing and before they suck it up. I watched the video.
You kind of explained to me. Don't move a lot. Has to eat constantly. Kind of sway back and forth. They just suck it up. So I must be a seahorse.
You think you're part seahorse?
I think I'm a seahorse.
Who knew?
I did not know that.
Oh goodness. You can barely see it. I added a little tiny vein to the snout there with that darker color. And now I'm just going back in with the lighter color, maybe a little tiny bit of blue. I just added some white to what I was doing, and I'm going to go back in here and just reestablish some of these shapes here. And this line here, I don't think I have right. I think I need to bring that in a little bit. So I'm going to grab and clean this out a little bit and grab some of that turquoise, which was basically the color that we've got going on behind this. Clean that up a little bit right there. There's more of a dip right here. I think there's a dip here. This. There we go. I'm going to get a little bit of that highlight color. Add some highlight. Make sure I can see the outline of it. Get a little bit of that reddish brown. Okay. I think this now is pretty good. I need to work on the eye a little bit. This little guy here needs help. And then there's black. I think this is where I'm going to use the black. There's little black tips on all these. That black will, you really kind of need the dark black to make it stand out with all these other dark colors back there. Right outside the edge and just barely touching and pulling in. So I'm not ready to do them anywhere else except for around the face right now, though. So let me see. I want a little bit of the purple and my white, a little bit of the brown. There we go. And I'm going to shadow underneath the eye just a little bit. So make sure it's light enough. And then I'm going to grab some white and just kind of reestablish the lighter tones in the eye there. So there's just like a little shadow underneath. That'll set that down into the socket, eye socket. And I've already got it kind of outlined with the darker color too. Get that turquoise color. Really pop this right here with turquoise. A little bit of white. This is really fun to paint. Mark's laughing. You're laughing at me.
No, I'll just take your word at it.
You will never know.
Looks like you're having enough fun for two of us.
You stick to the snacks portion of the show. Got that handled. All right, let's keep on moving. I keep getting kind of bogged down on the face, although it's one of the main focal points. So, you know, it's fine to give it a little extra attention, but I don't want to get too detailed in it. Okay, so I've got the purple. I've mixed it with this burnt sienna and yellow. So the yellow is going to tone down that purple, make it more brown. That's yellow oxide and the burnt sienna right here. So I grab that with the purple, and I'm going to use it right in here. I need to get that purple again and do this really dark right here. The contrast is all about the contrast. If you don't have it, you won't be able to see. It doesn't have any depth, so. Okay, set the color down bright and wipe my color off and then just tap it out to push it around. And if I have too much of it, I can get a little bit of water, pull some of it back off, or tap onto it to dab it off a little bit. This area here is dark, and then there's some dark, kind of faded. I'm going to get a little bit of glaze, kind of faded light purple all the way down here. Just dabbing it on. And I'm going to use this color in the back here. It's a little down into the tail. And some more of that orangey yellow. This is the Indian yellow color. I'm just going to kind of use this all up in here. There's white stripes. I'm going to put the white stripes on top. It'll just make it easier to have this color underneath, and then I can go quickly. Add my white stripes on top of all this. So just toning the body to a little bit of a darker tint. Kind of putting on dry brush like, so it's got a little bit of a texture. It's not super solid, and it a little bit transparent, just a little bit of glaze happening. See it on the tail as well. I think I'm going to take this part out. I don't like it. I just need to not do that. I always trip myself up when I'm trying to add things that are not in the reference photo, so I don't like it. It looks fake, so I'm going to fix it.
It could have been the equivalent of a wig.
Yeah, it could have been a
fin wig.
A fin what?
Wig. Or toupee or something.
Oh, toupee, yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much what it was looking like. Okay, so I'll just put in my little spikies back in. We'll fill in around it, but it'll be fine. Gonna use the yellow and my white here to do the nubs on this side. So just kind of starting right in here. There's little nubbies. Kind of already have these ones in there. some white. Start mapping out where these ones are. Get a little bit more of that purple, a little bit more glaze. Add a little bit more of that to the body here. Again, that burnt orange color. Some glaze. Add some more of that. Again, just dabbing it on so it's going on kind of speckled like. Okay, it's pretty good. And then the front side, it has some too, but it's lighter. Just use what's left on my brush to brighten up those areas. Okay. Let's grab the white and some zinc white, kind of 50-50. So if you have mixing white, that's basically what I've made here. A little bit of unbleached titanium, slightly yellow color. Can add a little bit of my Indian yellow even to brighten it up. I want it pretty light. So just slightly yellowed. And then a little bit of glaze. Don't want it to go on fully opaque. I want to be able to see through the under layers just a little bit. We'll add a couple layers of this to make it, you know, increasingly more covered. But this will kind of be our starting point here. This white color on top of the darker color will really push that translucency look. And then I'm going to use it with the very tip of my brush and do little speckles right here. Little dots. Right there. There's some dots down in here too. And then there's some more dots. This area though, the dots are dark, so I'm going to have to put them back in with dark dots. So I'm going to make the kind of line that goes from here all the way down the tail. Stabbing. And then the front. And this is going to angle back and crisscross. So every place where this kind of sticks out right here, it's gonna kind of continue all the way down, and then there'll be a little spike sticking out right in here. And then it kind of continues, but this side is not as obvious, the stripes. is light at first, so you can always kind of fix it if you make too much, get too much. But you want to keep it kind of soft at first. Yeah, just kind of blend out your edges. Once you get that kind of bright color on there, then you can kind of smush it around a little bit so it kind of goes over some of the dark area and in between. So it doesn't look like it's pasted on, Blend it in a little bit. Right, and I'm going to grab some of that brighter color. And just where these spikes happen, I'm going to darken up just that tip of the spike.
Someone's asked if they don't have glaze, what can they do?
Just add a little bit extra water. The glaze just helps the paint stick a little bit better than regular water. And it also gives us a little bit of working time because it's got a little bit of an extender in it, but it's not necessary. Water will also make it translucent like this. But with heavy body acrylics, you just have to be careful adding too much water because they are really highly pigmented, so they're not as much binder in them as cheaper acrylics. So when I first started using heavy body acrylics, went from craft acrylics to heavy body acrylics, and it took a while to get used to it because I was used to adding a lot of water to my paint to create glazes, and it was causing a lot of underbinding issues because when I'd go back over, so say like up in here, like when I want to add another wash of color over the top, because I use glazing medium in here, I can do that. I can go back in with some with another color very lightly, and it's not going to rub off that color underneath. It's still going to stick there. It's going to be, oh, I just did. It's going to be stuck to the canvas. So, of course, I just wiped that all up. So, I'm just fixing this because I just mushed that all up. Just trying to show what I... If I was to go in and try to glaze over the top of a paint that is just water and heavy body acrylics that's painted on really thin, it will lift. It'll come right off. It'll basically wash it off the canvas because there's not enough binder sticking that paint to the canvas. So. Okay, so that goes up to that, and that one is the sticky out one right there. And then this one is the back. I'm trying to make sense of all these little guys that are sticking out in this area here. So I put the whatchamacallit over the fin over that, and then took it off. I'm trying to remember where my drawing is. Here. Don't do the fin. If you're watching this replay, I'm sorry. If you were painting along in real time, just want to go back and like put a little notation. Sometimes I wish I could do that on my videos. Like I wish I could go back. They used to let you annotate your videos afterwards. You could go in and add words into your video after you recorded it, but they don't let you do that anymore. So it was really helpful. So you could go back in if you had something you were like, don't do that, or oops, or something, you could add little commentary to what you'd done, but they don't let you do that anymore. Okay. Starting to take shape somewhat. Get in there. What time is it? Okay. figured 4 hours. That's what I thought. So we're making decent time. I don't think we're going to be 4 hours. I think we're going to be less than that, but we'll see. Famous last words, right? I told everybody from 2 to 6. So we're doing our family game night tonight. So I was like, I think we're going to be going till 6 today. I just wanted to take my time with this, though. I wanted to do it more super realistic. I hadn't done one like this before, so I knew it was going to take some effort to get it just so. But he's coming together pretty quickly. He's not too bad. It helps that he's not very big, too, so not a huge amount of surface area to cover compared to the rest of what we did. Okay, so some of these are coming straight out at us right here. These ones are kind of just doing it like a dot almost. And I'm using this blue again because I'm seeing some of it. The tail is twisted, so you're seeing the 2 rows of spikes, but as it's going around here, they're kind of you're only seeing a little bit of them because they're kind of more facing straight at us almost. I missed a stripe in here, I think. Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, I did it. I did it right. Okay, just like somewhere. Okay. I'm going to put the black little tips on these. Grabbed a little bit of purple to do it. There's here. There's all these little spikies everywhere. He's got a lot all over his face. I'm gonna darken up this fin here and darken up right there if I need to. Again, having that dark contrast is really what's gonna make this look realistic. So it's really important. So cute. I'm going to get a little bit of the white lighter color and do up above some of these spikes a little bit. Bring them out. I didn't bring them out as far as I was going to because I knew I was going to put the black on there. But I'm noticing that the black shows up better if I put it just on the inside. So I'm going to do this, zoom in a little bit, hon, and I'll show what I'm talking about. Leave a little bit of the
Sorry, I'm listening to the replay.
I know. Just waiting for you to catch up there. Just on the inside. So I'm leaving a little bit of that dark or a little bit of that white tip there and trying to get just like right in the middle of it. And if I cover it all together, I need to go back in and add just a little bit of light on the outside of that tip. See that? That'll make it easier to see against that dark. And I see it on all of these. So I'm going to do that on here too. So just a little bit of white at the very tip of these. So you can do it after the fact or before, either way. But see how that's making them show up a little bit better. My autofocus is not working right now. I messed up the settings because I was messing with it when I was doing my Thursday video, and I meant to go back in and fix it again, but I forgot. So adding a little bit of turquoise to these ones that are sitting out here. Let me get more of my purple here. A little bit of black. Now that this is dry, I'm going to go back in now. Just try to catch it right in the very middle. So there's just a tiny outline of the light color. And like I said, if I covered up too much, I can go back in and add my little white. But I got a little white highlight around all those. Setting my brush down and kind of flicking it towards the middle there, so I'm getting a good little tip. These ones on the front side are not dark, but all of these here are going to just be like dots. Because they're pointing straight at us. Here's a little one right here that's coming up to, I think, yeah, there's a baby one right here. No, I forgot to spray my thing, so that dried. But you see my paint over here is still wet, so I haven't been thinning that out. But all of this that's mixed is going to thin out real fast. So I'm going to go back in now to these in-between areas and just kind of transition and soften up these areas. Add a little bit of this yellow oxide and burnt sienna mixture. Dab it in. And I still haven't added my white all the way up here, so I need to do that. Grab that white. It's got a little bit of that green still in my brush there. Okay, so it's been a while. These need to be dipped. Everybody needs to get dipped in the bath again. Keep them wet. A little bit of yellow oxide or Indian yellow. And then a lot of white. My white is starting to get stuck. After about 2 hours, you really do need to refresh your paints. They'll start to get pretty gummy. So I'm on the borderline here of usability on my paint still, but I'm gonna push it until I can't work with them anymore. But after they get too thick, you don't want to mess with them anymore. Okay, so highlight. Little speckles, and then starting to come down here. We've got our white stripes. Oh, there's a whole row of these sticky out things too right here. These little spines right here. I missed a whole section of them right there. So this back is all speckled. So I'm just going to dab some of this and then make sure that these spikes are kind of blended out so that they make sense. They're not just color on top here, and add a little bit of the highlight to the tips. More spikes right here. So the underside of this neck is pretty light. This whole area here is pretty light. And I'm going to grab a little bit of the magenta now. Use it with this light color here. Seeing a little bit of magenta in some of these lighter areas. It's mostly white, but it's just got a little bit of pink. I'm going to use this pink to kind of dab in here in between too. And then on the tail, most of this is all kind of pink. The stripes on the tail. Okay, then I'm going to grab some of the burnt orange. And I haven't cleaned out my brush. I'm just going to darken up maybe a little bit of burnt umber. Get some glaze. I'm going to add a shadow right here under some of these spikes that are sticking out. Of a shadow, a little bit of a dark area right here, and then some little stripies. Get some of that lighter color again, go opposite with the light color. Just blending these in. So I'm going to do most of that area with the light. I'm going to go back in with the dark and add my spikes. getting pretty close. I'm looking now at the reference photo. So I'm looking at my, it's really helpful. And you sometimes taking a photograph of it will help you. So you don't have the benefit of like doing it on screen like I do. So I'm looking at my screen and I'm looking at my reference photo side by side. So I'm able to see if I've got my values right. So I can tell maybe I can go just a slightly darker with my area here, and maybe like right up in here there's like a dark spot right here that I've lost. So right in here I've got a dark spot, and get a little bit of purple and put that in. Purple and burnt umber, quinacridone magenta, or quinacridone orange. Put that back in there, and just make sure that these in between stripes have a little bit more darkness, maybe in some spots. And I'm really just glazing and kind of going on in the middle of those dark areas, just to make sure that I'm leaving my highlights intact. I don't want to have to do those over again. I'm going to grab my yellow and add that back in, because it's not bright enough yet. I haven't put it in super bright to start with. I kind of started out fairly neutral and transparent so that I have time to build up these highlights brighter in my upper layers. It's going to really make these upper layers pop and shine. Now that I've got my kind of middle value colors, middle light values, I'm gonna now go back in like right in the middle of where I put those and add, and mainly around where I've got the spikes happening. There's a lot of brightness. So there's one like right in here that I'm seeing that's pretty bright, and then another one right in here and here. I'm sure each of these spikes on the forehead are highlighted pretty well. There's a highlight in front of the eye right here, and like right here. And another one right where that little spiky happens right there. Getting that bright white. There's some bright white on these. Brightening up my highlights. Again, the white kind of gets absorbed in, so it dries darker. So you may have to do your white areas like 2 or 3 times before they build up bright enough. They're getting there, I think. Getting pretty close to where I want them to be. I'm going to add a little bit of bright on top of some of these dark tips. This is where you can use a very teeny tiny brush if you need to. Do I need to, let me do something real quick here. Let me do. Okay, I set it to auto, so it should zoom in now. Try zooming in now and see if that works. Oh, much better. Need to. Get some yellow. Get some yellow oxide and Indian yellow. And I'm just using this white that was on my brush to use it in some of these areas and go over my highlight areas and over the. Sorry, this is going to kind of glaze and unify this whole area here. Give everything kind of a more natural look. Just blending over everything. It's just slightly chalky, so it's not solid yellow. It's see-through, so I'm just going over what I've done, but not covering it opaquely. So I want this one here, this spike, to connect with this spike here. And then this spike here. And these ones that are kind of coming down, I'll have to redefine the tips on these because I've already covered over them a couple times here. So I'm going to get my dark again and just redate where these are. And this one is way out here. I didn't do his body very good. I covered it up when I did my fin. I never put it back. It's out here. Get some turquoise here. I wouldn't have to be doing this if I hadn't put that weird fin in there earlier, so hopefully you won't have to do it if you did it right the first time. Okay, so this one comes out there. I'm just redefining these so that they make sense. There, this one here, here, one here, one here, one here, one here. Yeah, this one's coming down from there. Sorry, talking to myself. I do that a lot. Mark laughs at me. I'll be on the couch working on stuff. I'll be like talking. He's like, "Are you talking to me?" I think I would be like the worst coworker ever because I would be talking to myself all the time. Mark's getting a small taste of it, getting to work from home. To see my weirdness up close. I wonder if doing these videos has affected part of that too. Because I don't really remember doing that when I was working in an office, before. But I feel like I talk myself through most of these processes so much, in these videos that I'm probably used to doing that. I don't know. There's no telling. No telling. All right, I'm going to grab some of the burnt umber and burnt sienna here, and I'm going to add my little line down here. I kind of lost my line down the spine of this guy. And I need to get the light color. This area here is filled in with little dabs and dots. So I need that light color underneath first to be able to do that. Let me add the darker tips to the ones in the middle here while I'm letting that dry there. There's one here, and here. These are just showing up as little dots. Okay, then right in here, get a little bit more of the brown. This area is all speckled, little dabs, little dots, real close together. There's kind of a dark spots on the body in a couple places there and there. I feel like these got too far over. I feel like they should be a little closer over here, but I don't think I want to move everything over right now. So I'm just using kind of a lighter color here mixed in with that brown that I had in my brush. That burnt umber purple in mixture. And just kind of dabbing over and softening up the thing there. See, there's a stripey here that I'm missing. And I'm probably missing quite a lot, but this thing is pretty complicated. So the thing with these live videos is, I love it when people are like, you forgot to do blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you try painting this live and catching every little thing. Your eye, after a while, you get kind of tunnel vision almost, when you're painting. And so it's really good to take a break every now and then. And very rarely would I sit down to paint something and think, I'm going to finish this in one setting and I'm not going to finish, not going to stop. Like this whole thing of painting these live is very unusual. Like it's not what I would normally do if I, in a perfect situation. That's one of the things that I like about doing these the long videos. Like right now I'm working on the fawn with my $10 group. And so we work on it for like a couple hours every week until it's finished. So all month long, in about 3 to 4 sessions, we'll finish a painting. But I'll have, an hour or two to work on it, and then I can stop and then I can look at it and figure out what I need to change on it, and so like I figured out that the eye needs to be a little bit bigger on these, it looks good. And while I'm painting it, it looks fine, but I knew that like something was off, and it wasn't until after I finished the video and was able to like look at it later on that day. And I realized, the thing that was bothering me was that the eye needs to be a little bit bigger, just a slight smidge. So stuff like that. There's probably things about this that I would change if I, in a perfect world, if I came back to it. So there may be things that I've missed that you'll see when you're painting yours. Hopefully you'll do it right. So that's one thing that I would suggest to you is when you're painting, don't try to finish it in one setting, unless it's something, really simple. But for the most part, I would just say, take your time, do it over a couple different sessions, and in between set it up so that you're looking at it and kind of seeing things differently, seeing it from a different angle. And a lot of times you'll see things that you missed while you're just sitting right here looking at it for hours and hours. You just don't, it's just not, like I said, your eye kind of skips over details that you'll see really obviously later. Just because it's kind of, it's almost like it gets fatigued or something. There's so much coming at you visually that you can't process it all in one setting. So just know that, these videos that I do, live like this, I'm hoping to do the best that I can in in one setting, but there may be things that, that you'll see that I don't, that you'll want to change on yours and add or whatever. So, and yours doesn't have to be exactly like mine. Hopefully, when you do yours, you'll see things that I don't, or you'll do it a little bit differently because it'll be your interpretation. So it doesn't have to be exactly like mine. If at any point you're like, think I'm happy with this, then quit. you know, you don't have to keep on going and add more and more layers like I do on mine, you know, especially like on things like the coral and things. If you get to a point and you're like, I think I like that and I think I'm going to stop, you know, then that there's nothing wrong with that. This is your interpretation of your painting. So I am transitioning this tail here. There's that dark coral there, that kind of yellowish coral here. And then the tail here coming out of it with some burnt sienna here. Again, I think it actually goes this way. I'm seeing it in my photograph. There's like a dark area right here. So I'm just going to add a dark area right here at the base. We can't really tell what's happening there. And then add some of our turquoisey green, yellow. Kind of right in front of that dark area there. And I'm going to use this highlighted color to kind of just add some like squiggly highlights to my coral in some places, because I can tell it's really pretty dark overall, so I can get away with kind of adding some really, really bright pops of color here and there to it. Now that everything's dry, I can see how dark it's dried. I can add just a few little squiggles. I'm seeing some kind of bulbous something right here that I missed. The kind of burnt orange color. Use some of this yellow, green, white. Okay, and then I'm going to use some of this color too. This yellow, cadmium yellow, medium, and white. With a little bit of green, and I'm going to add a center line to some of these stems. I really want it to be almost yellow. Keep it fairly thin, so if you need to, you can switch to a different brush if you're having trouble getting a thin line on these. I'm going to use this brush. Now this is totally optional, but all of the along these they kind of have these little speckles, so I'm just going to tap in some speckles on this to make them give that fuzzy look that I'm seeing on these. And just make sure it's a bright enough color that you can see it. If you can't see it, then just add a little bit more of your light color until you can see this color on top. Again, totally optional. Don't have to do this. And I'm just seeing that kind of speckly look on all of these. So just want to add a little bit more realism to them. All of them have the speckly look, so it doesn't have to be all of them, but several of them do. Okay. And I'm gonna scribble with this. Scratch in some fuzzies over the top of some of this other stuff. And yeah, I didn't even paint in these things. These are, I don't know what this is, but it's like these kind of raised up little bits right there. I'm gonna grab some yellow.
What brush were you using for the speckles?
This is the 1/4 inch blender in the Velvet Touch. Used to be called Willow's blender. So using some of this to add that pop of orangey yellow into some of these areas. Just using the corner of my brush here now to dab in some dots. Just seeing dots and things. And I think I'm pretty happy with the Seahorse. I'm still not 100% happy with that back area here. I think I need to do one more coat on the background to blend him in. Just a little bit better around the spiky areas there. And I'm just using a thinned out paint here. And so I want to use some of this thinned out, maybe a little bit of purple with my turquoise here. Let me get a little phthalo blue because the turquoise is dry. Purple, phthalo blue, phthalo green, and a little bit of the purple.
When you
and
have
some glaze. Mm-hmm.
When you have a moment, can you show how you got that speckly effect with the
yeah
brush? Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to darken up the what?
People want me to tell you that this is amazing.
Oh.
And that they love you.
Oh, what?
Different people.
Different people.
One person thinks it's amazing, the other person loves you, so I don't know if they crosses or not, but
thank you guys. That's sweet.
Now I'm getting a sympathy vote.
They love you too.
Yeah, it's like it's an afterthought. It's not really. It's like honorable mention.
Oh yeah, we love you too.
I guess you're there, huh? We forgot about you.
You're not having to do the heavy lift in here, so they don't get the glory. Okay, I'm going to use some of this translucent color here and just do another layer over the top here and have some of these plants here, but they've got that transparent thing going on. So if I go over this, but it doesn't cover completely and I can see my underlayers, then I get that effect of the translucency. And then I need the darker. I went ahead and added the darker color to the bottoms of some of these to like just set them in, especially like right in here in the corners, you know, where they're just getting darker. So the speckly thing was just like my white, green, yellow, really bright greenish yellow, pretty bright. Tap, 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 and all I'm doing is tapping and speckling the leaves with the tapping, going right over the top of them. And it's okay if they go outside the border, because if you look at the photograph, they're not actually just on the leaves. They're actually, it's like the algae kind of is clinging to the leaves, so it's not like a perfect, you know, it's not part of the leaf. That's what I'm saying. It's kind of attached over the top of it, so it
is growing on it.
Growing on it, yeah. So it doesn't have to be perfectly inside the border of the leaf. It's kind of outside of the border of it somewhat. And I've got some of this leaf color. I'm just gonna I feel like I want, and this is just me, I feel like I want a tall, a couple of taller grasses coming in here, but maybe that's, I don't know, maybe I don't need that. I'm going to try it and see, and I'm going to do it thin so that I can take it off if I don't like it. But I feel like maybe like right in here, just to kind of stop the eye from going off the cliff, you know? Like kind of, maybe just 3. Yeah, I kind of like that better. Just kind of does like that on it. So it doesn't, because it's all leaning, everything's leaning this way. And that kind of maybe stops it a little bit. I could even do one up a little bit higher. Yeah, there we go. Just like, but I still want this dark in here, so I don't want it to be all the way up against him because then it'd crowd it out. But I think that just helps kind of pull the eye back in a little bit compositionally. Okay. And I'm going to leave that pretty translucent because those leaves are pretty transparent. Just tuck it into down here somewhere. If that makes sense. Okay. think I'm pretty much done here. Just adding a few little last minute details to some of these, little bit of highlights with this cobalt teal blue white mixture here. There is a little bit of really bright green down here, though. So anywhere where I want this coral to stick out, I want to go back in with like a little bit of bright white and just pop it out towards us. I've done this 2 or 3 times now, but you can see how that white just kind of absorbs down in. So you may have to do it 2 or 3 times before that it gets bright enough. And I think I want to do it with the pink, and then I'm going to be done. I'm going to do it one more time over the top of this pink. Mostly white, a little bit of yellow, or a little bit of the pink. But mostly white. Maybe a tiny, tiny bit of the ultramarine blue. Okay. Then get the darker medium color and just blend out around it. And I think we're pretty much done. Getting the brighter magenta here. And just kind of glazing it in and around these. Just set it in. What you thinking?
Just watching.
Ready to go get some dinner?
Yeah, what's for dinner?
I don't know. Guess we should have planned that out before the show, huh? It's kind of late now. Some yellow, Indian yellow here. Good. Now, if you, in all of this, you know, have lost your dark areas, which is super easy to do, like in here, I think my dark is not quite dark enough anymore. I don't want to leave my brushes in the water. So I'm going to just make sure I've got a clean brush and just grab my dark purple and brown. Glaze, maybe a little bit of ultramarine blue, and then just go back in here and add that dark. You can see when you do it how light your background has gotten, you know, when you go back in and add these really dark areas, like, oh wow. And you can glaze over some of the areas to add shadows too, so it doesn't have to be just the dark. You can, if you do this transparently, you can add some of the shadows back in. And just be careful, because now that you've got everything kind of set in there, you don't want to cover over anything important, but you do need these dark areas in here. Grab a little bit of white. Use it with the purple and the burnt orange here. Make kind of a middle value, just light white, because it's just going to make it more opaque. And I'm going to kind of go over the border of these dark areas that I just added and just kind of settle them in a little bit. Because they can look kind of stuck on. So if they're looking a little stuck on, you can do this. Push them back a little bit. All right, I'm pretty happy with that, I think. Okay, so my unbleached titanium here. Notice right here I don't have there's like an area of green sticking up in front of this thing right here. So I'm just going to do that. Just pushes that back. Same thing right here. White. You can go ahead and start talking if you want to. I'm pretty much done. I've been saying I'm done for the last 5 minutes on getting some yellow here. I'm just making teeny tiny adjustments. Super chat. Yay.
Yes, we had a super chat from Laura earlier in the show. And she said, love this painting, Angela.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you for going over the brushes. Reminders of new info is always appreciated. Thanks to you both for being here with us and for us.
Oh.
Thank you, Laura.
We love doing this, so yeah, thank you. Glad you guys enjoy it. All right, I'm going to do a little bit of blue right here. The little spikies make them look a little bit more translucent. I kind of lost it when I added my white. So just going to go back in here and add that blue, which is just phthalo blue and white. I'm going to get some white. I'm just noticing that this is like a little bit on this body here. I just want a little bit brighter white on these spikes. And I'm going to call that good. It was fun. Actually, let's see one more thing. Mark knows me. He knows I'm not done. And I say I'm done.
You noticed that when you said that
turquoise.
I didn't even move?
Yeah, no. All going to sign it. I need to do it with the brush because too many things going on here.
Still doesn't mean anything.
Shut up. This is like just what I said before. There's, I see things differently as I'm, closing it down. It's almost like, I don't know, I start to see things that I hadn't seen before. So, all right, I'm going to sign it, stack it here. So I want to leave about 1/4 inch at the bottom. And I'm just using a small round. I think this is the 3/0 round. I found the shorter liners are easier to sign with, and I've added lots of water to my paint, a little bit of glazing medium, so that I can write with it almost like a pen. All right, I think we're pretty good. I was looking up in here, see if there's anything I want to change, but I don't see anything. I feel like I want to define this little guy just a little bit more, get some more white. And this guy right here needs to be brighter because I can't tell where he starts and stops. So right here. Okay. Oh, and I see something here too. So like right on this spike here coming down, there's a line coming down that spike. Maybe not that thick. Let's try that again. There's a line right here, almost connecting these two. All of these have a little bit of a line. And if I need to, I can do it on these ones too. I feel like they could use just a little bit of help there. Like a little shadow coming up off them.
So people want to know that after we cut, do you go back and mess with the paintings more?
No, I do not. Very, very rarely. Maybe once or twice, only if I've like done something really stupid and left out something major. But no, I don't. I pretty much as is at that point. If, like if I was selling it and I saw something major, then I would, maybe. But most of the time the things that I would change are very minor. They're not anything that is like a deal breaker. Because obviously I'm going to see it if it's super obvious. I'll see it now, before I quit. But a lot of times they're just like small little changes that I just don't feel like are all that important. So I'll mess with it. All right. I think that's pretty good. I'm going to stop. Phew. How long was that? Yeah, almost 4 hours. So that's kind of what I thought. But it takes time to get the realism. If you're going for realism, that's you just kind of have to know it's going to take a while to get there. But I think it's worth the effort. So hope you guys try this one. And if you do, you can share it with me on my social media. I've got links down in the description to all the materials that I used and the links to where to buy them. Your purchases help support our channels. Doesn't add anything to the price of your items, but we get a little bit of a commission off of the, thank you, I was thinking of the word, commission off of the sales. So if you're interested in buying art materials, anytime you go through our links that are down in the description of our videos, or like at the Brush Guys, you have to use the code Angela Fine Art to get for us to get them a commission, but it's just an easy way to help support our channel. So we appreciate those who do that. Take the time to do that. I'm just adding some yellow gold here, yellow green. So yeah, and we'll be back on Tuesday night with another video for you guys. So hope you join us for that. And we'll be painting. What am I painting on Tuesday night? Dandelion. So that'll be fun. Just one, so we can take our time and kind of really focus in. I've done dandelions before, but I'm glazing this to darken up this area that's kind of going into the shadows here. Just adding a little bit of burnt umber. I've done dandelions before, but there were several of them. So this time it's just going to be one. It'll be a little bit easier, and we'll kind of focus on that fun bokeh effect in the background with the little dotted things. So I think it'll be fun. I hope you guys join us for that, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Be careful. Take care out there, and we'll see you next time. Bye.